With me, Diksha Bisla.
And I'm Kripa, and coming up on the show today, US President Donald Trump has hinted that talks aimed at ending the war in Iran could resume this week. Speaking to the New York Post, Trump said US is more inclined to visit Pakistan for next round of talks.
And of course, we're going to get you all the details on that. And also, US President Donald Trump has launched a stinging criticism of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Trump has accused Meloni of lacking courage over failure to join the US in attacking Iran. All this and more coming up on the show today. But first, a quick check on the headlines. Donald Trump tells New York Post a second round of Iran talks could happen in Pakistan over the next 2 days after the first round ended without a deal. A day earlier, he claimed unnamed Iranian officials called him seeking a deal.
US military says it stopped 6 ships from sailing out of Iranian ports during first 24 hours of a naval blockade, while ship tracking data earlier indicated at least 3 ships passed through Strait of Hormuz despite blockade.
Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian says Tehran is not seeking unrest and has complied with international law, questioning the justification for attacks on the country during a visit to a government ministry.
US State Department says Israel and Lebanon agree to hold direct negotiations following talks in Washington. Announcement came after Israeli and Lebanese envoys hold talks mediating by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
I think it's very, very important for the Pope to be careful when he talks about matters of theology.
US Vice President J.D. Vance heckled at a Turning Point USA event in Georgia after warning Pope Leo to be careful on theology and defending US push for a Gaza ceasefire.
UNHCR says about 250 people, including children, feared missing after a boat carrying Rohingya refugees and Bangladeshi nationals capsizes in Andaman Sea. The trawler departed from southern Bangladesh was on its way to Malaysia.
North Korea accuses Japan of grave provocations after Tokyo reiterates its opposition to Pyongyang's nuclear weapons program in annual diplomatic paper. Says Japan's stance threatens its security and sovereignty.
Firefighters battled major blaze that engulfed facade of a residential building in Albanian capital, forcing evacuation of residents. About 80 responders and 13 fire engines deployed. No fatalities reported.
Oil prices edge higher after a sharp drop, with US crude rising as traders await clarity on possible US-Iran talks. Fresh diplomatic signals, including comments from Donald Trump and Israel-Lebanon negotiations, lifted hopes of easing West Asia tensions.
Well, US President Donald Trump has suggested that talks with Iran could resume within days, and the comments come after a weekend of failed negotiations in Islamabad.
While speaking to the New York Post, Trump suggested that second round of talks could happen over the next 2 days. He also said that US is inclined to keep Pakistan as the venue for the next round of talks.
Meanwhile, the US military has tightened its blockade around Iranian ports. The United States Central Command confirmed that at least 6 merchant vessels were asked to turn around and return to Iranian ports.
But ship tracking data suggests that at least 4 Iran-linked shipping vessels had crossed the strait despite the blockade.
Well, a potential second round of negotiations with Iran is expected to be led by US Vice President J.D. Vance again. Vance says he believed Iranian negotiators wanted to make a deal.
We had never had a meeting like that where you have, the person who's effectively running the country in Iran sitting across from the Vice President of the United States. That had never happened. And what look, honestly, after 49 years, there's a lot of course, mistrust between Iran and the United States of America. You're not going to solve that problem overnight. But yeah, I think the people we're sitting across from wanted to make a deal. And
Vance also praised Trump's grand ambitions, saying that President Donald Trump is pursuing a sweeping agreement with Iran rather than a narrower deal. Listen to this.
He doesn't want a small deal. And that's one of the reasons why, one, I'd say in Pakistan, we made a ton of progress. But the reason why the deal is not yet done is because the president, he really wants a deal where Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, Iran is not state sponsoring terrorism, but also the people of Iran can thrive and prosper and join the world economy.
Well, Trump has insisted any deal must permanently bar Iran from becoming nuclear armed. Media reports said the US sought a 20-year suspension of Iran's uranium enrichment program during the weekend talks, and Iran in turn proposed suspending its nuclear activity for 5 years, an offer that US officials rejected.
Meanwhile, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian said that the world should accept Iran within the framework of international law.
Now, whoever we speak to, we say accept us within the framework of international law. We do not act against international law. You should accept those same international laws. They want to eliminate anything that leads to growth and awareness.
Following the Islamabad talks, Iran's leading negotiator and country's foreign minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi said that both sides were inches away from the deal. But US delegation kept changing the goalposts. Tehran has maintained that it will not seek nuclear weapon, but the decision cannot be forced on them.
The American demands include Iran opening the Strait of Hormuz and abandoning any nuclear weapon ambition. Israel, on the other hand, wants Iran to end its support for Hezbollah, Hamas and Houthis. Meanwhile, the Iranian side, it wants US to lift sanctions and provide assurance that it will not be subjected to any more attacks.
Well, the Iranian side has not yet responded to Trump's remarks over a second round of talks, but United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said it was highly probable that talks would restart.
According to reports, foreign ministers from Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Egypt and Turkey, they are likely to meet for talks on regional matters on Friday.
Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping is also pushing a 4-point peace plan, and these include peaceful coexistence for regional countries, respect for each other's national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Now, upholding the international system with the United Nations at its core and finally linking progress to security to boost economic growth.
According to the report, Xi presented the proposal during a meeting with Abu Dhabi's Crown Prince, and it was done in Beijing.
And for more on this, we're now being joined live by Giorgio Gafiro from Washington, D.C. He is a professor at Georgetown University and CEO of Gulf State Analytics. Professor Gafiro, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Always a pleasure to have you. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. Let's start with Washington's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think it could genuinely and realistically weaken Iran enough to actually come back to the negotiating table more ready and more flexible this time around? Or do you think perhaps Washington is overestimating the leverage it has over Iran at this moment?
Yeah, thanks so much. Always great to be on your program. A really important question you're asking here. I think obviously that's the thinking on the part of the Trump administration, is that if the United States continues to impose this blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, it will squeeze Iran to the point whereby the country's leadership determines that it's in Tehran's interest to simply come back to the negotiating table and make more concessions and make them rather quickly. That, from the White House's perspective, would be the ideal outcome of this blockade. However, I think the people who are in agreement with that argument and people who advocate for continuing this blockade, which really got started 36 hours ago, tend to overlook some of the serious risks that are associated with this new U.S. blockade. I think, in short, it's going to make it less likely that diplomacy works. Let's keep in mind that under international law, this blockade is an act of war. This does not bode well for keeping the ceasefire in place. And I think there are many other questions maybe we can get to later about real risks when it comes to U.S.-China relations and all the scenarios that could unfold there. But in short, I think this risks just bringing the U.S. and Iran back to war very quickly and undermining any hopes that we may have for diplomacy to succeed through Pakistani mediation.
Professor, I'd like to get your insights on the deployment of U.S. troops to the region. CENTCOM has said that over 10,000 U.S. troops, warships and aircraft, they are now enforcing an impartial, the word is impartial, blockade on Iranian ports, and 6 merchant ships were turned back in the first 24 hours. But at the same time, CENTCOM even says that they are supporting freedom of navigation in Hormuz. So how can the U.S. block Iranian ports but keep Hormuz open at the same time, in the same breath? How is it possible?
Yeah, the situation is, well, with the blockade, like I said, it's only been in effect for 36 hours. So it's a little bit early to reach huge conclusions about how exactly it's going to play out. The U.S. military is claiming that it has not allowed any ships to go through, meaning that this blockade has so far, over the past 36 hours, been airtight. There are other sources claiming otherwise. I'm not exactly sure where the truth fits. But in any event, I think what we need to keep in mind is that with the high level of risk that the continuation of this blockade will lead to outright hostilities and deadly clashes, armed clashes between the United States military and the Iranian military, it creates conditions that give many in the shipping industry incentive to simply stay away from the Strait of Hormuz. And therefore, I think it might be a little bit naive to imagine what the U.S. is doing leading to some sort of freedom of navigation that benefits many around the world. I'll add another point here as well. The Iranians have been crystal clear that if their ports can't be used, and if the U.S. military is going to prevent ships from coming into Iranian ports, but allowing them to access other ports in the Persian Gulf that belong to countries besides Iran, then Iran will see to it that no one will be able to ship oil or gas from the Gulf to the rest of the world. Within this context, I think there's a very high level of risk that Iran is going to start attacking the port infrastructure of some of the GCC states. This creates many dangerous scenarios. And I'll just wrap up by saying that, mindful of the potential for that scenario to unfold, we have Saudi Arabia now actually voicing its disagreements with the U.S. policy of blockading the Strait of Hormuz. I think that's really the main reason why officials in Riyadh do not want to see the U.S. continuing with this blockade.
Right, Professor Kafiru, and the irony here is absolutely, it's hard to ignore, because in trying to squeeze Iran economically, Trump is also putting its own allies who have been supporting the war at risk. It's also, of course, the ratings are at an all-time low. there is this, of course, the risk of political backlash back home. Now, do you think that President Trump is essentially risking this global economic fallout for uncertain diplomatic gains here? Because as we've seen, the last diplomatic meeting in Pakistan, it failed to yield a breakthrough. What could be different this time around, and which could lead to results different than what we saw the last time over the weekend?
Yeah, a number of questions you're asking right there. So much to unpack. What I think is the most important point to bring up here is that when the United States and Iran had their high-ranking officials meet in Islamabad on April 11th, I don't really think we can call that negotiations that were taking place. It seemed to me as if the U.S. side, led by Vice President Vance, was essentially meeting with the Iranian side in the Pakistani capital to deliver ultimatums. The thinking on the part of the Trump administration, I assume, is that given everything that has happened to Iran since the American-Israeli war on the country began in late February, Tehran was going to find itself in such a weak situation, a weak position, that they would come to Islamabad and agree to all of the Trump administration's maximalist demands. What I think Trump and those around him failed to really recognize is that as a consequence of this war, Iran is actually feeling very emboldened, and the Iranians did not feel as if they needed to come to Islamabad and agree to the Trump administration's ultimatums. On the issue of the nuclear file, I don't think we can expect Iran to move away from the stance that it's maintained for many years. That is that because Iran is a signatory to the NPT, which, with the exception of 4 countries, every single country in the international community belongs to, there are rights that Iran has to a nuclear program, and Iran very much associates its rights to enrich uranium with the rights that any sovereign nation has. And it is just simply a non-starter for the Iranians to consider zero enrichment. I think if the Trump administration is willing to make some actual concessions on that front, I think Iran would be willing to make concessions, but just simply not at the point of zero enrichment. We understand from reports that Iran was willing to suspend enrichment for 5 years, and the Trump administration said no. Anyway, to get to your point, if there is going to be real negotiations that take place, the Trump administration will have to move away from delivering ultimatums and engage in real diplomacy. And if there is going to be a second meeting and the Trump administration is going to engage in real negotiations rather than ultimatums, I think we might have reason to believe that a deal is possible.
Right, and Professor Kafiru, just to drive that point a little further, of course, nuclear enrichment was another sticking point apart from the Strait of Hormuz. And now with Iran having witnessed 2 wars, and all in the span of just 1 year, do you think the proponents on the side of having a nuclear deterrent, which it had denied seeking in the first place, do you think those voices are going to feel vindicated at this point and even emboldened, as you briefly mentioned?
Well, yeah, there are voices in Iran who, point to North Korea, and they will say the reason why American bombs are not dropping on Pyongyang or any other part of the DPRK is because North Korea became a nuclear-armed state in the mid-2000s. And if Iran wants to achieve real deterrence, it needs to have nuclear deterrence. I'm not saying everyone in Iran holds those views, but that is an argument that certain Iranians have been making for some time. Unfortunately, as a consequence of the American and Israeli aggression toward Iran, and you're right to point out, we're not only talking about the war that broke out on February 28th, but also bringing us back to the 12-day war of June 2025. Because of these 2 wars, which Iranians see as very connected, those who argue in favor of becoming a nuclear-armed state, they seem to have a stronger case to make within Iranian discourse right now.
Professor Kafiru, you had earlier mentioned about Saudi Arabia and the role it has in this entire war. And recently, the reports show that Pakistan is under a defense agreement with Saudi Arabia that places Islamabad in a very rare position because it was mediating the talks between US and Iran. And can Pakistan really be both mediator and even a military partner in the same war, in this escalating situation?
Great question. It certainly is the case that Pakistan finds itself facing numerous dilemmas, including the one that you're alluding to here. I think Pakistan wants to have a relationship with Saudi Arabia that is very, very strong. This is a multifaceted relationship, very special relationship that dates back many decades. I think today Saudi Arabia very much wants to be close to Pakistan and vice versa. Pakistan has its own interests in being close to Saudi Arabia, but Pakistan also wants to have a good relationship with Iran. And in light of the tensions, the hostilities that have returned to Saudi-Iranian relations ever since Iran chose to retaliate against the American-Israeli war on February 28th by firing missiles and drones at Saudi Arabia, it creates difficult circumstances for Pakistan to navigate. I think this helps us understand one of the main reasons why Islamabad is very keen to play this diplomatic role, because if this conflict spirals out of control after the ceasefire collapses or maybe doesn't, or perhaps expires later this month, that is going to create very bad sets of circumstances for Pakistan that they simply don't want to have to deal with.
Absolutely, Professor Kafiro. We'll have to wait and see how the situation evolves from here. But for now, thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Well, US President Donald Trump has launched a stringent criticism of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni.
Trump has accused Meloni of lacking courage over failure to join the US in attacking Iran. Notably, the criticism comes a day after Meloni criticized Trump's recent comments on Pope Leo.
Now, in an interview, Trump said that he was shocked at Meloni over her unwillingness to join the war in West Asia. He said, and I'm quoting him here, "I thought she had courage, but I was wrong." The interview was published the day after Meloni condemned Trump's recent criticism of Pope Leo as unacceptable.
What I said is what I think. Those statements, particularly regarding the pontiff, were unacceptable. I expressed and continue to express my solidarity with Pope Leo. I'll tell you more. Frankly, I would not feel at ease in a society where religious leaders do what political leaders tell them to do. Let's say, not in this part of the world. So, that is why I did not agree, and I said it.
Trump hit back, saying Meloni is the one who is unacceptable because she does not care if Iran has a nuclear weapon and would blow up Italy in 2 minutes if it had the chance. Meloni, Italy's far-right leader since October 2022, has been one of Trump's closest allies in Europe, but the president said they had not spoken for a long time.
Well, Trump had launched a blistering attack on Pope Leo, calling him weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. Pope Leo had responded, saying he has a moral duty to speak out against war and didn't fear Trump.
Vice President J.D. Vance has also weighed in on Trump's feud with the Pope, effectively telling the pontiff to stay in his lane. In his latest comments, Vance said Pope Leo should be careful when he talks about matters of theology, and the Vice President's remarks were interrupted by hecklers, including an audience member who shouted that Jesus Christ does not support genocide.
I certainly think the answer is yes, and I agree. Jesus Christ does not. I agree. Jesus Christ certainly does not support genocide. Excuse me, sir. Right now, you see more humanitarian aid coming into Gaza than it has any time in the past 5 years, because we have taken that situation seriously.
And with that, it's time for us to slip into a very short break on World DNA. But don't go anywhere. Coming up on the other side, authorities in South Indian state of Andhra Pradesh They have launched a drone delivery initiative aimed at providing critical medicines to remote villages. All this and more coming up on the other side of World DNA. Stay tuned. You're watching Beyond World is One.
Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
5 states, one powerful voice. From Tamil Nadu to West Bengal. Kerala to Assam. Every vote shapes the future. Get the election pulse only on WION. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION, World is One.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
Vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching World DNA here at WION World is One. I'm Kripa with Diksha. Let's start with a quick look at the headlines.
J.D. Vance is expected to lead U.S. delegation in upcoming negotiations with Iran, with Witkoff and Kushner also participating, according to CNN. Trump tells New York Post that second round of talks could happen in Pakistan over the next 2 days.
Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian says Tehran is not seeking unrest and has complied with international law, questioning the justification for attacks on the country during a visit to a government ministry.
U.S. military says it stopped 6 ships from sailing out of Iranian ports during the first 24 hours of a naval blockade, while ship tracking data earlier indicated that at least 4 ships passed through the Strait of Hormuz despite the blockade.
Israeli military says 3 Hezbollah operatives, including a member of Group Salid Radwan, for surrender in southern Lebanon's Bint Jebel after a close-range battle, handed over to military intelligence for interrogation.
I think it's very, very important for the Pope to be careful when he talks about matters of theology.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance heckled at a Turning Point USA event in Georgia after warning Pope Leo to be careful on theology and defending U.S. push for a Gaza ceasefire.
UNHCR says about 250 people, including children, feared missing after a boat carrying Rohingya refugees and Bangladeshi nationals capsizes in Andaman Sea. The trawler departed from southern Bangladesh. It was on its way to Malaysia.
North Korea accuses Japan of grave provocations after Tokyo reiterates its opposition to Pyongyang's nuclear weapons program. An annual diplomatic paper says Japan's stance threatens its security and sovereignty.
Firefighters battle major blaze that engulfed facade of a residential building in Albanian capital, forcing evacuation of residents. About 80 responders and 13 fire engines deployed. No fatalities reported.
U.S. Treasury says it will not renew temporary sanctions relief for Iranian oil exports, tightening pressure on Tehran. The move signals a return to stricter enforcement as Washington ramps up economic pressure amid rising West Asia tensions.
The U.S. Central Command says no ship passed through the Strait of Hormuz during the first 24 hours of the American blockade.
Well, additionally, 6 merchant vessels were ordered by U.S. forces to turn around to re-enter an Iranian port on the Gulf of Oman. According to the CENTCOM, over 10,000 sailors, marines and airmen, along with over a dozen warships and aircraft are executing the mission to blockade ships entering and departing Iranian ports.
But shipping data and tracking reports tell a different story. According to maritime data from Kepler, at least 3 ships sailing from Iranian ports crossed the Strait of Hormuz despite the U.S. blockade. These ships were part of at least 7 Iran-linked vessels which passed the strait after the US blockade came into effect.
Further, a report in the Wall Street Journal says that over 20 commercial ships have passed through the Strait of Hormuz in the last 24 hours.
The conflicting data has raised doubts over the US blockade. Iran's Revolutionary Guards maintain that they are in full control of traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. And amid these claims, a report in the Wall Street Journal says that European countries are preparing a post-war plan to secure the Strait of Hormuz.
And according to the report, the European coalition, it would exclude the US, Israel and Iran. The plan is likely to be announced this week. The developments come at a crucial time.
Later this week, French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will host a virtual meeting with several dozen countries to discuss policing the strait. But interestingly, the US will not be attending the meet.
Meanwhile, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has said that Tehran is not seeking unrest and remains compliant with international laws. Well, his comments came shortly after US President Donald Trump. He announced that talks to end the Iran war could resume in Pakistan over the next 2 days.
Now, whoever we speak to, we say accept us within the framework of international law. We do not act against international law. You should accept those same international laws. They want to eliminate anything that leads to growth and awareness.
Well, for more on this, our correspondent from New York, Susan Tehrani, has sent us this report. Take a look.
U.S. officials say enforcement of the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is underway. The United States Central Command reports that no ships have left Iranian ports in the first 24 hours, and 6 merchant vessels were directed to turn back. At the same time, more than 20 commercial ships have continued to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Officials say that's because the blockade is limited to vessels that are connected to Iranian ports, while other international shipping is still being allowed to transit. On the diplomatic front, President Donald Trump says that talks with Iran could resume soon, indicating an outreach from Tehran despite the recent stall in negotiations. Separately, the Treasury Department says that it will not renew a temporary authorization that had allowed the sale of certain Iranian oil already at sea, with that measure set to expire in the coming days. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
While the world remains focused on the war in Iran, violence continues to rock the Palestinian enclave of Gaza.
In the latest, at least 10 people, including a toddler, have been killed in multiple Israeli strikes. According to authorities in Gaza, at least 4 people were killed in an Israeli strike that targeted a police vehicle in Gaza. A police officer and a 3-year-old child was among those dead. At least 9 bystanders were wounded, some critically. While a ceasefire is in place since October 10, violence has continued, claiming several innocent lives.
This child, his father had him after girls. He is the only boy for his father. What is his fault? What is his crime? He should be wearing a wedding suit today at his cousin's wedding. Instead, he wore a shroud stained with blood.
In a separate incident near Jabalia, Israeli strikes killed a 14-year-old. The Israeli military is yet to comment on the strikes. So far, at least 750 Palestinians have been killed since the ceasefire deal took effect.
The Israeli occupation targets civilians on a daily basis in the Gaza territory. A short while ago, we received an alert from civilians that there was a targeting at the family pharmacy at Nafak Crossroad. Approximately 3 or 4 ambulances were dispatched. Until this moment, 1 martyr has been transported, as well as a big number of injured. These injured are in a very critical state due to the overcrowding of this area. The area targeted by the Israeli occupation is located in a busy market.
Meanwhile, a report in the BBC says that Hamas has rejected a disarmament plan proposed by a senior official in Trump's Gaza Peace Board. According to the report, Hamas has conveyed to mediators that it would not engage in talks on the second phase of the truce until the terms of the first phase are fully implemented by Israel. However, Israel has refused to move forward without Hamas's disarmament.
Now, under the Trump-brokered ceasefire, the second phase is meant to lead to a permanent end to the war following Gaza's demilitarization and a full withdrawal of Israeli troops.
Shifting our focus to India now, the Andhra Pradesh government has launched a drone delivery initiative aimed at providing critical medicines to remote villages.
Well, the initiative has been launched for the tribal regions of the Alluri Sitarama Raju or ASR district. The Andhra Pradesh government says that drones are being used to send essential medicines and critical medical supplies to remote villages.
The government says that 1,000 drone deliveries have already taken place and more than 25,000 medical products have been dispatched so far. They include diagnostic kits, emergency drugs and other essential supplies.
The drone delivery project is being implemented by Andhra Pradesh Health Department. It is being supported by the US-based UPS Foundation. The Andhra Pradesh government says that so far the 1,000-odd drone deliveries have covered a distance of about 40,000 kilometers.
Now, for more details, take a look at this report sent by our correspondent Sricharan Sharma from Hyderabad.
In an innovative healthcare move, the Andhra Pradesh government has launched a drone delivering initiative to serve remote tribal regions of Alluri Sitaramaraju district, aimed at strengthening last mile delivery of diagnostics, medicines and essential medical supplies in remote tribal areas. The initiative has already clocked 1,000 flights covering over 40,000 kilometers and clearly dispatched more than 25,000 medical products. Smaller government health centers are linked to Paderu Medical College and Government General Hospital for the transportation of diagnostic samples, emergency medicines and other essential supplies to the Paderu Medical College. Sricharan Sharma reporting for WION, Hyderabad.
All right, now let's also take a look at some of the other stories making headlines across India.
Responding to a question from an Indian student on H-1B visas, US Vice President J.D. Vance cited his own family and Indian in-laws while discussing immigration in the country. Pointing to loopholes in the system, Vance acknowledged the role of immigrants in building the country. However, he added his in-laws never asked him to act for India and that America remains a priority.
You know, you heard me talk about H-1B fraud because I think there is a lot of fraud in the H-1B system. And I think you can believe on the one hand that there's a lot of fraud in the H-1B system while also believing that there are people who have come to the United States in the past who have enriched this country. And look, I'm married to the daughter of immigrants from India, and, you know, I love my in-laws. And they're great people, and they've been great contributors to the United States of America.
Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge will chair key opposition meeting today to chalk out a joint strategy ahead of the special parliament session, where bills on women's reservation and delimitation are set to be taken up. An internal meeting of the INC will be held at Kharge's residence with leaders including Rahul Gandhi, KC Venugopal and Jairam Ramesh.
Violent protests erupted in India's northeastern state of Manipur as police fired tear gas to disperse stone-pelting demonstrators. The unrest followed the deaths of 2 children killed in a bomb blast on April 7 at a house in Bishnupur district. Manipur has remained tense since ethnic clashes first broke out in May 2023. Well, the Trump administration has eased sanctions on Venezuela's financial system Tuesday to try to boost its economy.
Now the move comes amid protests by public workers demanding higher pay. The U.S. Treasury Department has eased sanctions against Venezuela's central bank and other large financial institutions. They can now legally use U.S. currency, directly receive billions of dollars in oil sales, and re-enter the U.S.-controlled global financial system. The move will allow the Venezuelan banks to engage in previously restricted financial transactions, such as wire transfers, credit and debit card services, and other activities.
Well, the move comes 2 weeks after the United States lifted sanctions against Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, who took power after Washington ousted her predecessor, Nicolas Maduro, in a military operation in January.
The U.S. has taken control of Venezuela's oil revenue. It has eased a 7-year-old oil embargo on Venezuela and issued licenses allowing a handful of multinationals to operate in the country under certain conditions.
But U.S. financial sanctions has delayed the disbursement of billions of dollars to Venezuela's central bank, slowing development deals. Well, last month, public workers angry about their wages began protesting in the capital. Rodriguez has promised to boost wages starting May 1st.
And the Iran conflict is not just reshaping geopolitics, it's also stirring a fresh debate in global finance.
Well, as Iran begins accepting payments in China's yuan for oil, talk of a petro-yuan is back on the table. But can the Chinese currency really challenge the dominance of the US dollar? Or is this momentum just temporary? Take a look at this next report for more.
The Iran conflict is triggering fresh momentum for China's yuan in global oil trade. After Iran began accepting yuan payments to allow safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, demand for the Chinese currency has picked up. Data shows a sharp rise in yuan-denominated crude transactions with China's cross-border interbank payment system, or CIPS, recording a single-day transaction of 1.22 trillion yuan, its highest ever. The shift is reviving debate around a potential petro-yuan system where oil trade is priced and settled in China's currency. China's push is backed by deepening trade ties with the Gulf. Yuan-based transaction between China and the region touched 1.1 trillion yuan in 2024, growing at over 50% annually since 2020. Beijing has also expanded financial infrastructure from yuan-denominated oil futures in Shanghai to cross-border payment systems and digital currency experiments with Gulf partners. But the scale gap remains significant. CIPS volumes are still far smaller than the US CHIPS network, which processes around $2 trillion daily. And crucially, much of the yuan trade is still concentrated in sanctioned economies like Russia and Iran, limiting its broader global adoption. Despite rising traction, analysts remain cautious on the yuan's ability to rival the dollar anytime soon. The greenback still dominates nearly 80% of global commodity trade, anchored by deep financial markets and decades of trust. The trust, however, faces new headwinds in the Trump era. Meanwhile, structural challenges persist for China. This includes capital controls, limited convertibility, and fewer global investment avenues for surplus yuan holdings. Even if the dollar's share declines to around 70% over the next few years, the yuan is expected to rise only modestly to 8 to 10%. For now, the Iran conflict may accelerate diversification, but a true shift away from the petrodollar system remains gradual, not imminent. Business Bureau Report, WION World is One.
The U.S. Treasury Department is looking to access the new AI model, Mythos, developed by Anthropic.
But as concerns grow over the potential cyber risk posed by advanced AI systems, and according to a Bloomberg report, the Treasury's technology team is seeking access to the Mythos model to identify and test potential vulnerabilities before they can be exploited.
The AI model Mythos has raised alarm bells across government and financial circles, with top officials warning it could significantly change the cybersecurity landscape. And as per the report, the U.S. Treasury Department cybersecurity team has been asked to prepare for emerging threats from powerful AI systems. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has also held an urgent meeting with Wall Street leaders to discuss the potential risks linked to the model.
Now, officials warn that Mythos could enable more sophisticated cyber attacks and urge financial institutions to begin testing their systems against it. Anthropic itself has acknowledged these risks, warning that the model could be used to power cyber attacks if organizations do not build defenses in advance. During internal testing, Anthropic found that Mythos could identify and exploit vulnerabilities across major operating systems and web browsers. As part of its controlled rollout, Anthropic has launched an initiative called Project Glasswing, allowing a limited number of organizations to test the model. The company says it is in discussion with government authorities and is open to working with local, state and federal agencies.
The move by the U.S. Treasury Department comes even as the Pentagon earlier this year flagged Anthropic as a potential supply chain risk.
And now shifting our focus to the world of sports, India's teenage batting sensation, Vaibhav Suryavanshi, could soon add another feather to his already impressive resume.
Reports suggest he is in line for a call-up to the Indian men's team for their upcoming T20I tour of Ireland. A string of standout performances in grade cricket earned Suryavanshi an IPL debut last season, and in his very first campaign he became the youngest centurion in IPL history.
Last year, he also set a record as the youngest player to score a century in men's List A cricket. The youngster has carried that form into this season as well, taking on some of the world's best bowlers with remarkable confidence. The teenager has already amassed 452 runs in just 12 innings in the IPL, with scores of 78 against Royal Challengers Bengaluru and 39 against Mumbai Indians. Suryavanshi has also shown that he is not overawed against bowlers like Jasprit Bumrah and Josh Hazlewood, and has gone ahead with the same approach like against others.
His performances and fearless approach have reportedly convinced selectors to test him at the international level. The two-match T20I tour of Ireland in June is seen as the perfect opportunity, with the Ajit Agarkar-led selection committee keen to assess India's bench strength. Reports also suggest that a strong showing in Ireland could put Suryavanshi in line for a call-up for the Zimbabwe tour. A debut for Suryavanshi would make him the youngest male to represent India at the international level.
Sachin made his debut at the age of 16 years and 205 days. Overall, Shefali Verma holds the national record, having debuted for the Indian women's team at the age of 15 years, 7 months and 27 days.
Well, the Indian box office has a new champion. Aditya Dhar's two-part film Dhurandhar and Dhurandhar 2 The Revenge has officially grossed over rupees 3,000 crore. That is approximately $360 million worldwide.
Now, it has become the first Indian film franchise in history to achieve this monumental feat. And this unprecedented success isn't just about staggering numbers. It is a massive paradigm shift for the Indian film industry. For the past few years, the Hindi film industry had been searching for a definitive anchor to prove its mettle against mounting competition from massive regional blockbusters. Dhurandhar has single-handedly silenced the skeptics by becoming the highest-grossing Hindi franchise and the first to gross the 1,000 crore rupees mark, that is nearly $120 million, net mark in the single language domestically. It establishes that the core Hindi belt possesses an insatiable appetite for grand storytelling.
It also sets a new benchmark for epic-scale films. Perhaps the most striking aspect of the franchise's record-breaking run is where it did not play. The film was de facto banned across the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, and given its gritty subject matter regarding criminal syndicates and counter-terrorism, saw no theatrical release in Pakistan.
Yet it comfortably inaugurated the 3,000 crore rupees mark, that is $360 million club. This is a resounding message to filmmakers and studios about India's domestic box office power, coupled with strong North American, European and Australian diaspora markets. That is more than enough to shine on the global stage amidst the ensemble of heavyweight actors. The real superstar to emerge from the Dhurandhar phenomenon is its architect, Aditya Dhar. After delivering a blockbuster debut with Uri, the Surgical Strike, Dhar took a massive, unprecedented gamble by shooting a massive narrative back-to-back.
Well, his ability to bring together an epic while managing hundreds of characters and raw storytelling has led him to elite visionary, has given him the title of an elite visionary of Indian directors. He is no longer just a filmmaker. His name is now a franchise in itself.
Well, that's all we had for you in this edition of World DNA. But don't go anywhere. More news and updates will follow on the other side. You're watching Beyond World is One. Stay tuned.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One. Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
5 states, one powerful voice. From Tamil Nadu to West Bengal. Kerala to Assam. Every vote shapes the future. Get the election pulse only on WION.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the